Most new devs want to jump right into making a Steam game, but what they lack is a foundation. Without a strong foundation, your Steam game will collapse. Your house will collapse. It's really hard to develop a really good Steam game without having a strong foundation in game development. I've heard on the internet, I've heard by others that you should just jump right into making a Steam game because you're going to learn so much, and that there's so many things that you will learn from Steam or creating a Steam game or launching a Steam game that you couldn't learn just by developing games on your own. But this is false. This is a fallacy. It doesn't matter how much effort you put into a Steam game, your first Steam game, if you jump right in, you are not going to have the necessary foundation that you need to make it successful. Now, yeah, there's once in a while, very rare, that someone will just from the get-go build out a Steam game from never touching game development before and be successful. But that's the exception, not the rule. Most people will not fall under this category, will not fall under this path. I've even heard someone even say that it doesn't matter how many years of game development they put into before they start a Steam game, it won't give them a head start. They even went as far to say if someone has 3 years of game development experience and they start a Steam game, they won't be any further ahead than someone who just starts making a Steam game. Now think about that. Do you really think that someone who has 3 years of game development experience, true game development experience, won't be 3 years ahead of someone else who doesn't have any when they start Steam at the same time? The person who has 3 years of game development experience doesn't need to know how to use an engine. They don't need to pick an engine. They don't need to learn to code. They probably have some coding background. They've probably published a few games. They've probably imported art or created their own. They've probably hooked up animations. They're probably either good at 2D or 3D or both, or have some competency in it. They're not a newbie. They've been doing this some time. They have a basic understanding of how the game dev process works. Now take that on the other hand, if someone who just starts out, jumps right into Steam, well, they don't know how to use an engine yet. They don't even know what engine they want to use. That's one of the hardest decisions that most people take when starting out is, do I do Unreal? Do I do Unity? Do I Godot? Do I do Godot? Do I do one of the other ones? I watched 10 different videos and they all say to do Godot or Unity or Unreal, whatever the option is. And then there's all kinds of things. I don't know any programming. I don't know how to even import assets. I don't understand how the scripting system works. Should I use AI? Should I not use AI? There's a million and one questions you have to ask yourself on top of building a Steam game, on top of figuring out how to market the game, on top of how to polish the game. I think those that think like that are only trying to make themselves feel better because that's the route they took. But in reality, it's not a very good idea to build out anything or to try to take the professional route of any skill, of any endeavor, without building a strong foundation. Now, it doesn't take long to start building your foundation. You can start pretty quickly, pretty early on, to start developing a foundation. It might not be your Steam game foundation, but it will be a foundation. So what is a game dev foundation? What should you aim for your foundation? Well, a good place to start is your game dev process, understanding the process, understanding how to plan a project, how to start that project, how to fill that project with information, with content, how to polish that project, and how to publish that project. That's the general idea, the general process for game development. It's a really good skill to understand. If you understand the process of any skill out there, or any task, or any career, or any path, it's a lot easier to succeed in that, to pivot when you need to when you hit roadblocks, to pivot or to stop and take a different path. It's a lot easier to do all those things. Now, on top of that, after you understand the process, there's skills you should build out. Programming skills, coding, art. The next biggest thing I think for your foundation is picking an engine. And I'm not going to go into the details of what the engines do. There's a million and one videos out there about it. You just need to pick one. I don't care which one you pick. I use Unity. I've tried Unreal. I've tried GameMaker. I like Unity. Unity stuck with me. It's what I like. I like C# and the scripting system. Just pick one. It's important. It's more important to pick one that fits your needs and sticking with that. It's very bad. It's not the best practice to engine hop just because you watched a video and someone convinced you that X engine is better than Y engine, right? Sticking with an engine for a certain period of time and trying to really understand it is a far better thing to do than to swap engines all the time. I'm not going to go into detail on how to start game development. That's a different video in itself. But how do you actually build a foundation, right? What do you do after you understand the process, and how large should your foundation be? Well, to start, your foundation should be small. And the best way to do it after building your preliminary skills, your understanding your engine, maybe going through a few tutorials, maybe understanding some programming, the next thing you do to really start your foundation is to start your foundation, to build your first foundation, to build your first game. It's going to be small. Think about it as like a 6x6 shed foundation. Something small, a small project. You're not going to build a mansion on it. You're not going to build a Steam game on it. It's probably going to suck. It's probably going to be weak. There's probably going to be cracks in it, but it's something to start with. Your first game is not going to be the best game, but that's okay. It's okay to have a bad game to start with because we're going to build on top of it. As long as you try to learn, and you finish, and you try to do better every time further, that's okay to build bad games at first. You'll build it, you'll build on top of it. So what do you do after that? You build another game. And in this process, you're going to build out your skill. You're going to build out your UI skill, your programming skill, your art skills, your getting used to engines, building different systems, maybe building different tools. You're just going to be building out skill after skill. Or how you're going to do this is by building out game after game and expanding those games. Think about it as building a foundation, like a house foundation or a structural foundation, but you have no skill to start with, right? So you build small foundations, and then you build something on top of that, and then you build a little skill doing that, and then you build another foundation, and you build a better structure, and then you build a larger foundation, and you build a better structure, eventually leading to your house or your mansion or something, a bigger structure that is structurally sound, that won't fall down because you have cracks in your foundation. What I mean by cracks is poor programming skills, no polish, poor art choices, poor engine choices, stuff like that, where you rushed into something, you weren't skilled enough to build a structure of that size, a game of that size, and it all comes crumbling down when it's finished. You start small, build a small foundation, build small skills, and build on top of that. Start a small foundation, build a bigger one, and a bigger one, and a bigger one. Don't rush it. Don't go from a tiny shed foundation, a small game, to a Steam release. Take your time and work towards it. Now, as you're building these foundations and you're starting small, there are certain things you should avoid starting out, and then you can address them later on as your skill builds. But there are certain things you should avoid, like polish. Your first few games, you don't have to worry about polish too much. You can worry about that later. That's more important later. Let's build the simpler skills first. Let's build the skills that are more important, that polish comes on top of, right? We need to learn to write code before we can write good code. We need to learn how to add art to the game before we can fine-tune the art. We need to learn how to just design levels or build out levels before we can make really good levels, right? We need to learn how to maybe put some sort of story into the game before we can fine-tune really good story or really good art. We need to build the simple version before we can build the polished version. So don't worry about it because you don't want to be overwhelmed. If we're constantly looking at, well, what's the best way to do something, then we're going to either quit or we're going to not make progress because we're stuck in our loop of questioning ourselves. A really good thing to learn at this stage and when you start building your foundations, your small games, is scope. At least trying to understand scope. Now, we all go over scope. We all have scope creep. It's okay to blow out our scope and get past it. We just don't want to make a habit of it, and we don't want to turn a 6-month game into a 6-year game. That's the idea. If you go a few weeks, a few months over scope, that's fine. It's inevitable. We all do it. But you need to start understanding scope based on your skill set and based on how much time you want to put towards the game. Skill is something that I don't hear talked about a lot for when you're planning scope. I hear, well, you plan what kind of game you make based on how much time you want to put into it. But a big part of that is your skill level. It's how much you can complete in a certain period of time at a certain skill level. Because someone who is a senior developer or a senior game developer can complete way more tasks in a same time period as someone just starting out. It's not just time based, it's also skill based. So at this point with scope, what you need to do is throw everything out there. Doesn't matter what you want your game to be, your first small few games, just throw it out there, word vomit, write it all down, and then cut it out, and cut some more out, and cut some more out, and get it down to a singular task, a single input, a single action. And when you think it's cut enough, it's small enough, cut it some more, maybe cut it in half. Because if you're just starting out, you don't know what you don't know, right? You don't know all the things you're gonna run into, all the roadblocks, how hard things are going to be to implement. So the best way to do it is to start really small. And you can make really good games even with small scope, even with things slimmed down to singular tasks. Think about certain games like Flappy Bird. All you do is tap the screen, or all you did was tap the screen, and your bird moved up and down. Singular task, super viral game. Think about even Mario when it first came out, the original Mario games. All you did was run and jump. You didn't do much more than that. The controller only had 2 buttons. You could run and you could jump, right? That was pretty much it. Yeah, you might get fireballs or whatever, but the essential action was running and jumping. A super popular game, but super simple actions. So the next thing for building your foundation is don't overwhelm yourself with too much noise, right? And by that I mean, you'll hear people recommend focusing on hooks and story and game design documents and joining game jams and stuff like that. And all these have their time and place, but for starting out, they're not important and they can actually be detrimental to your progress. So take game design documents, for example. I talk about them all the time in my videos, but I really don't think that they're that important when just starting out. They have their time and place. They can be important later on for larger projects, but the risk to reward for them, the time of the return on investment, the ROI, is not there when you're just starting out. It does not serve you to spend days, weeks planning out a document and then updating it and updating it and updating it to progress your skill or anything like that. You can completely push that aside and just work on your skill and not worry too much about planning. You can plan a little bit, you can write a few things down, but overall you don't need a game design Bible, you don't need a game design document. Not starting out at least. You can use it later on, but I would not recommend doing it just strictly on the fact that you don't want to be overwhelmed. I think that's a big part that people, they take on too much when they get started with game dev because there's so much thrown at you and the overwhelm is too much. Another thing is like hook and story and art and stuff. I think hook and story are actually least important or less important than art. And take those for example is when you're just starting out, when you're building your foundation, when you're building these small games, your hook doesn't really matter. You're not building a magnificent piece that is going to stun the world. You don't need amazing hook. And you don't need story. You don't need to make anyone feel anything. Just make the game fun by having inputs and having something happen in the game. That's what's important. Get the basic fundamentals of a game to work before you worry about what the hook is and what the story is. That comes later. And the third thing I even said was game jams, right? Game jams are great. They can be great for building skill and learning scope and working with others or whatever it is. But I think they can be too stressful starting out for some people. If you like it and that's something you want to do, then go for it. I'm not telling you don't do it. But game jams it's not required at least to do game jams. You can be successful without doing game jams. It's not required. So if it's something you don't want to do or something that you're not used to doing or participating in or that you've tried and then you're like, this isn't for me, but everyone tells me I should do game jams, you don't have to do it. You can build games on your own without doing jams, right? They're time and place. They have great standards or great parameters, I should say, but they're just not for everyone and don't feel like you need to do them because others are recommending it. Okay, another major thing that I see all the time that I run into myself all the time that I did when I was learning software development, that I still do with game dev today, that I hear plenty of people talk about, is the self-doubt. We all have it, we all run into it, and it's the endless questions that we run into. Game development is a complex thing. It's a complex machine. There's a million and one things that we have to do, from starting out learning it, filling with content, publishing it, and then the content itself is super complex with all the different hats we wear, the UI, the GUI, the player, the enemies, the AI inside. Should we use AI outside, like models? Should we create our own art? There's a million and one questions out there. And we're always asking ourselves, is it the right thing to do? Should we do this? Should we do X? Should we do Y? Am I making the right choice? Maybe I should do this other path instead of this one. It's okay at the beginning to make the wrong choices. You're going to make the wrong choices. There's nothing wrong with that, and it's inevitable. You will make the wrong choices. You're going to make poorly optimized games. You're going to make poorly written games. You're going to make ugly games. You're going to make games that you thought were a good story that don't have a good story. It's just the nature of the beast, and that's okay. If you can accept that you are going to make poorly written games, even if you're proud of it, you can be proud of these games, but then when you look back on them years later, you're going to look at them and be like, that game was really bad. It sucked. It wasn't fun. It was ugly. Whatever the reason is, it's okay to question yourself. It's okay to doubt yourself, but don't let it stop you from progressing. We all have our own skill level. We all have our lives. We all have our responsibilities. We all have different timelines, time periods, time windows that we can put towards game development. So you shouldn't compare yourself to other developers. You shouldn't compare yourselves to the people on YouTube or the people in your groups that you're in. We all have our different tasks and roles and responsibilities in life, and we shouldn't let the questions overwhelm us because we're not making the progress we think we should, or we're not making the choices we made, or we spent a day or a week doing something and then it didn't work out, and you might think it's time wasted, but at least it's a path you took that you thought was going to be successful, where you thought this system was going to work, and you learned that it didn't work. So now in the future, you don't have to go down that path again. You know that's not going to work. We can learn from it. We just shouldn't let it overwhelm us, that all the self-doubt that you will run into. Everyone has it. Everyone goes through it. It's okay. Just keep progressing. Okay, so this next point I touched on a little bit earlier with Scope about word vomit and throwing everything out there, then simplifying it. Well, we can take that a little step further. This might be more later down the line, after a few projects, after you build out your foundation some, or build out a few foundations. But the idea is to throw everything out there for your game projects, cut it down, and then break it into systems. Systems are extremely important. Systems can also be reused. Break these down into systems that, if it's a complex system, or it seems like it's a complex system, break it down into small, simple systems, right? You can even do things like characters. You can break those into multiple systems, character control or health, stats, attack, whatever it is. Break them into systems and build those out separately. If you're still in your learning stage, I've talked about this before, you can turn those systems into other games if you want to just really understand how to build out a good system. But when we're building out games, even for Steam games, it's highly recommended, or I highly recommend it, to break down your Steam game into dozens on dozens of systems and work on those individually, having them work together or independently depending on what you need done. And it's a way to keep on track. It's a way to keep sane. It's a way to not bite off more than you can chew or get overwhelmed. Is to break things into systems. Think about it with the structural format. When you lay down your foundation, you can't just throw everything at the house at once, right? You need to frame it, or build the walls, or then put the windows in, plumbing separate, electrical separate, roofs separate, appliances are separate, finishes separate. There's a million and one tasks. Some can be done simultaneously. Some have to wait on others, but there's different systems that need to go in certain orders to build a house or to build a structure. It's the same thing for game dev. You need to break things down into systems. You don't just jump in and everyone just starts trying to build the house at the same time. There needs to be order, there needs to be structure. Game dev is no different. Okay, this next point I also touched on a little earlier with hooks and stories. It's focus on what's important, right? Now, hook and story and everything can be important, but starting out, it's not as important. The most important thing you should focus on is fun. I know that's cliche, everyone says it, and what is fun, because fun's subjective. But a good place to start to identify fun is finding out what's fun for you. You should be your avatar, you should be your player. You're more likely to make a fun game if you find it fun. If you try to make a game in anticipation that someone else might find it fun, you might fail. You're more likely to fail. But at least if you think it's fun, if you genuinely think it's fun, it's more likely that someone else out there or multiple people out there will think it's fun. Now later, you can focus on hook and story and art or whatever it is that you want to introduce, but they're not always required. Hook is not required to make a fun, successful game. Story is not required to make a fun, successful game. You might analyze games and say, well, this game has a hook, but does it really have a hook? Not every game has an actual hook. It's just not required, especially starting out. The idea is not to say, well, don't ever focus on them. It's just not to get overwhelmed. That's the whole point. That's the whole idea of this building a foundation, is to counter feeling overwhelmed, because a lot of information is being thrown at you. I'm throwing a lot of information at you right now, which you might feel overwhelmed, but I'm trying to simplify it down to just not to worry about as much and focus on building skill. Okay, so another thing when building out your foundation is routine and consistency. I can't stress it enough how sticking with game dev, trying to do it every single day for a little bit, even if it's just an hour, you might feel like, well, an hour is not much time. And yeah, a lot of times an hour is hard to get into the process to actually make good progress, but it's still better than nothing. To put in at least an hour a day in game dev, to hone those skills, to get familiar. It's really easy to, when you are building out games or working on systems, to even if a day or two goes by, you forget what you are working on, where you left off. It takes time to get back into it. You can mitigate that by decreasing the time window, the time gap between game dev sessions, by doing it every single day, at least for an hour. It just builds habit also. You can start working it into your daily routine. At first it might seem difficult. You might think, well, I have all these other things to do, or I need time to chill out after work and stuff. If you start just introducing it and working at it maybe before you do certain things, before you play a game, before you scroll on social media, it'll start to become habit, and you won't have to work it into your schedule. It will just automatically be in your schedule. You won't have to make sacrifices. You'll think, I need to go and I'm going to go work on game dev because that's what I want to do. If you start working it in daily, it'll just become a habit for you, and you won't have to make as many sacrifices, or at least they won't seem like as many sacrifices. And this last point I also touched on it a little bit, is avoiding Steam from the get-go and avoiding the people who recommend Steam from the get-go. I create content. This is what this video is. It's content. I'm trying to help you though. I'm truly trying to help you. You can believe me or not. I'm truly trying to help you. And I think there's a lot of other content creators out there who try to help you, but a lot of them also try to get views and clicks. You can see it in their title and their thumbnails that they title something, a certain video, a certain way, and then you get into content and it's deceiving. The content does not match the title. A lot of them, it sells better to say, hey, learn game dev, make money with Steam. Starting game dev, here's how you get on Steam. That sells better, that clicks better, that will get more clicks than learn game dev, avoid Steam, right? Because that's a big thing. Everyone wants to get on Steam. Everyone wants to make a major Steam game, a major Steam release. A lot of people out there who create content do it strictly based on how many views they can get and don't truly want to help you. I can't say who it is because I don't know any of their true intentions, but I can say that I've watched other developers, I follow them because I'm also learning, and certain content certain ones create are good, and other content seems like it's nothing but clickbait and nothing but filling their pocket with money or getting views from you, and the information is not truly helpful. Now you might think that about me, and that's fine. That's okay. That's your prerogative. You're welcome to do that. I try to make my content, my videos, on true practical game dev information based on my own experiences. Is it always going to be right? No. And when it's not right, or when I realize it's not right, or when my opinions change, I pivot and I shift views. Not based on what a trend is, but based on what I truly believe is the best path forward for myself and for my viewers. Watch your content, watch the people that you like to watch, but try to look at it with an open mind. And if they're trying to give you information that seems too grand or too out of the box or too like how to start game dev, and then they talk about Steam, I would say that's a red flag because there's a big gap between starting game dev and aiming towards Steam. There's a huge gap in between. But the more you do this, the more you create games, the more content you watch, the more experience you get, the more you'll realize when someone is blowing smoke at you, right? So, like I said, this video is about building a foundation. It's really important to build your foundation before you start a Steam game. If that's your goal, to make a Steam game, have a Steam release, it really is important to build a really strong foundation. I appreciate your time, I appreciate you watching my video, and I really hope that you are successful in your game dev journey, and I'll see you next time.